Vivisection by Andrew Chappell. Chapter 1. Sensory Organs. Head. Eyes. When the engine, with a click, started to hum to life, silence fell upon us. All 6 of us cousins, squeezed into a limousine like a pack of ravens caged, then secured with 6 clicks of a seatbelt, bound against the black leather of the chairs. The nervous energy of tears and speaking of memories and nervous anticipation falls away when we departed our parents for the limousine in front of us. The feeling can't be compared to that of a funeral procession, because that is what it was. We drove at a snail's pace, behind a solemn man marching slowly down my grandparents' road, where I was taken to and from school, holding the hand of my nanny. Me and my little sister, blonde like the sun, would walk head down, scanning the crumbling paths for discarded rubber bands to add to the rubber band ball that would rest at the top of the fridge. Usually, we would walk ahead of my nanny, but today, she leads us, her flock. I never looked. I declined the invitation to see her resting, cold, but more herself apparently. But today, she looked beautiful, cast in the disguise of beautiful flowers, arranged in the words nanny, wife, and mum. Time with my family was usually spent racing to fill all gaps in space with endless loud anecdotes of funny stories and intimated details, all warm with ruddy humour and affection. But we sat cold today, and in a hushed silence, for we had no words. I sat at the back, my cousin Heather between me and my sister. The 3 sisters sat in the front, each holding each other's hands, almost in silent prayer if viewed from afar, which was how it felt. It felt odd to observe these people who I knew so intimately in what seemed like such a private moment. We were close, physically squeezed together within a black tin box, yet for each person, I'm sure, we felt alone, as if I could see each of them, but could I reach out to them with words or a soft, anxious hand? Surely not. We stopped for a second to let the sentry climb into the first car, and it was then that we started moving quicker. The streets of my hometown, that once hardly moved as if stuck in time, started to blur against the window glass. Past the street where I remember falling over and grazing my knee, or walking with Chloe with a shopping bag of bacon ingredients, a box of blueberry muffin mix with no blueberries from our last baking day, taking the crumble out the oven with a content ooh, as it did look delicious, was quickly eaten up and now lives in memory of a euphoric day. We travelled through these streets and out of town, down roads that could have been anywhere in the world. The sky was grey, but at least the muted yellow greens of the grass and the deep rich green of the trees served as a distraction for my weary eyes, so hungry for anything other than the damp, vacant eyes of my family, deep in their own minds. I tried to search all the boundaries of my own mind for thoughts, but I spent minutes bouncing against its walls hoping for an answer for how I was feeling, but I couldn't muster an answer. So I let the images in my mind fill up the empty space, let the journey fill up the time. Men and women dressed up in woolen coats, walking their panting dogs. Flocks of women dressed in neon pink lycra, like crazed flamingos, racing against the tide on crowded paths. Old houses made of deep brown bricks against a backdrop of small grey roundabouts, circled by a hairdresser and kebab shop, with the sign of a bad pun with cramped text surrounded by cartoon fire. Sparks of orange against an overcast street. The dirty browns of the houses, mixed with the pale greys of the street, faded into the sparsely lush greenery of open fields, between old winding roads lined by twisted trees, unfurling outwards like the skirts of dancers twirling out. The untouched wilderness of the fields, quietly growing tamer as we drew closer to our destination. The ponds growing more manicured, the trees less twisted, like straight soldiers in uniform, and the grass cut short, as I could feel the anxiety within me rise, the ring on my finger spinning round and round as I twist the now warm metal. We drove to the front of the building, an arch of white stone and glass, and with a deep breath, we undid our seatbelts and exited the car. Once squished together, like a black mass of twisted mourners, we now split apart and dove to our parents, reaching out with our hands and bodies to embrace each other. I walked slowly behind my sister as she dived to my mother and embraced her, and swapped tissues amongst each other, a pack going in my sister's bag, a pack exchanging from my cousin Chloe to my mother, and another in return as they were scented. My sister moved on from my mum and forward to our dad, and I went in to embrace my mother. She offered me a pack of tissues, but I declined. I knew myself, and that I wasn't going to be able to cry. I was too anxious for that. Is we will listen to it after your bath, she said, as the water ran away from the tap into the bath, gushing like a river, until it went over the line I attributed as full bath. Dipping my finger into the untouched mirror, making ripples in the surface, I tested the water. Too hot. A gush of cold water. Too hot. A gush more. It was ready. The bathroom with the bath was in my parents' ensuite, so I closed the door and got naked as the day I was born, and pushed myself into the water. Holding my nose and blowing out my ears, I dug my head below the surface. My short hair, once gelled into spikes, falls back into place on my head, and I lie back, floating on the surface. I hated baths. I felt like I was in a pot of human soup. Distant voices of my parents walking around their bedroom, opening and closing drawers, then the rustle as my mum climbs onto the bed and switches on the television. The X Factor theme blasts through the wooden door and into the bathroom, mingling with the steam in the room, fogging up the mirror. I hear the crowd screaming, some bad singing. I assume One Direction just got through to another week. My sister will deny that she is excited by this. I get out of the bath, the water draining lazily down the plug, gurgling like it is full. I rustle the towel across my body and pull myself into my pyjamas, and I sit on my parents' bed. My dad getting up and putting the Carpenter's Gold DVD into the player beeping and coughing as it stutters and splutters, as the disc goes in and out like a conga. As it loads, I blast my hair with a dryer, the hot air tickling the short hairs on the back of my head. It doesn't take long, and I'm done, and I look in awe as the Rainy Days and Mondays begins to play. Karen Carpenter is alone on an empty stage. She is noticeably young here, and her dark hair makes her face glow like a moon against a dark background. I stay sat in awe, silently mouthing the words as she sings Top of the World, and looks older and thinner, but still smiles and close to you, which was always my favourite. Why do birds suddenly appear every time you were near? These siblings acted as the backdrop behind the softer moments in time. The other music of my childhood seemed to pulse with the synths of the 80s music that orchestrated my mother's family parties, where we would drink, eat, laugh and dance, often all at the same time. A constant chatter of noise, words flittering like birds and bouncing off the walls and around the room, hitting me while I gulped down my pink gin, get up and move my body to Whitney Houston or the Weather Girls, rolling my body with my cousin Heather as we roll along the river to Proud Mary with Tina Turner, or force the ground in formation while we rock the boat, laughing and moving. My Auntie Heidi singing along to best described as loudly as I glug from my jug of pink gin again. Once most have left, and we lie on the sofas, flattened and heavy, like our bones are made of rubber. We put the carpenters on, and we sit in silence, wet-eyed and dreary, as we see through the years a young woman sing with her brother, growing thinner with an illness of the mind, while smiling with Mickey Mouse atop a hill with a quilted sun. And it is as if when she smiles, she is smiling at me. When she sings, she is singing for me. We all talk about how brilliant her voice is, and how she died so young, taken so soon. But for me, she was alive. Her soul lives forever in my Carpenter's Gold DVD. She moves as I see her alive on the stage. I hear her singing to me. As the disc ends and we all go home, I lie in my bed at night, singing with her still, like I did when I was a child. Why do birds suddenly appear every time you are near? Just like me, they long to be close to you. Whoa, close to you. Whoa, close to you. Whoa, close to you. Nose. The rain drums against the roof of the car as we drive away and out of my hometown. The pitter-patter of rainfall is heavy-set against the muffled sound of the tyres on the road and the talking of the radio, and me, my sister, and my dad screaming the lyrics to the final countdown. I push my face against the cool window. My hot cheek squishes against the cold glass and the condensation. I keep myself there until I feel my chin start to freeze, and I look out at the world. The dark grey sky and deep green trees stand high, then fall backwards as we fly past them, as if the world behind us flattens and falls into an abyss. I race raindrops across the scene, chasing across the car window as my dad drives the car. It was a two, as the two fastest merged and combined before reaching the edge. I watched them hop across the trees and the buildings in a defined drop. Then with a roar of the engine, the car would speed down the road and the drops would smear across the glass like angry tears before flying into the sky behind us. The rain pouring harder and filling my view with small bubbles of water that split the scene into 1,000 portals to form dimensions. Then the crackle of a wrapper as my dad opens a cough suite, filling the car with the smell of menthol and aniseed, hot and sticky, bearable within the cold, fresh air of the rainy day, but when it is hot, like during our car rides during the thick heat of the summer, The smell stagnates in the heavy air and chokes in my throat. It gets worse when my dad passes the crinkled yellow bag to my sister, and she unwraps a blood-red sweet from within. I can hear the suckling of the hard glass-like drop in her mouth, and the stench ever closer to me, filling my nose, stuffing it, making it harder to breathe. It was one of those summer days, when the sun shone with mild heat, that me and my sister stained a beautiful day by arguing. The hard black plastic of the portable DVD player tightened our grasps, as we each pull it closer to ourselves, each wailing out to our parents as to whose turn it was to watch our DVDs packed within the pockets of the front chairs. We couldn't decide on what to watch. The adventures of some adjective-named blue creatures that my sister loved so much, or the dystopian trials of a teenage girl with a braid, a bow, and two hot guys into her. We would never agree. For ages we pushed and pulled, until my sister, grasping the prize, pushes it forward until it slams hard against my nose, and blood started to pour. I grasped my nose, and I remember the blood, hot and wet, running between my fingers. My mother's raised voice as she frantically passes me tissues over the front seat, telling me to put my head between my legs, and shrilling at my father to pull over, his booming voice telling us that he could not. My sister still whining about the custody of the DVD player that had sent blood pouring from my nose down over my lips and onto my chin, spreading red flowers onto the scrunched white tissue. My mum reaching again to pull more out of her bag. Deeper and deeper, I remember her hand reaching inside her bag. She pulled out a small pack of tissues, and she pulls a creased white sheet and dabs under her wet eyes. My dad's hand passing over the centre console to take hers and touch her shoulders. I take out one of my earphones to listen. My mum's voice heavy like a yawn, as she does when she cries. Mourns the holiday that we lost when she went into the hospital for the second time in a row. Our holiday stained with her illness. She believes we must have no luck. I remember her saying. My dad replying, at least it happened we were here and not in Ireland. She dabs her eyes again, and she puts the tissue into her pocket. I put the earphone back in and look outside the window. It is raining, and I chase raindrops down the window as we drive home. Tongue. Slightly damp and smelling of chlorine, we would go to Grandma's. Parked along a street of flats, the brown brick crusty like Stonehenge, the buildings leaning into each other like crutches. Standing behind my mother and father, we would buzz ourselves in, and the brown door would give way to a dimly lit set of stairs. We would climb up and let ourselves into her apartment. Me and my sister, hyper with the energy of youth, rush past our parents, give a quick, stilted hug to our grandma, then run past again to sit down, or pull back the sliding double doors to the dining room with a screeching wind of grinding wood and metal to find a small box of toys that we would fill our time with. The room smelt old, with dusty framed black and white pictures circling over like a pack of vultures to pick meat off our bony frames, the stiff carpet rubbing holes into our knees as we stack multicoloured cups and twiddle the thumbs of a stuffed leprechaun. We would spend our time hunched in the corner of that room like animals, playing with our toys, while I could hear the muffled sounds of my dad's deep voice, trying to reconcile with my grandma. Her high voice and wailing, thick with an Irish accent that never waned over the years in England, but how she was lonely, and that no one ever visits her, especially my uncles, and that seemed to be my dad's fault. But we were naive to that, playing with our colourful toys in a separate, muted room, apart from the troubled outside world. It was when we could smell the hot, rich, tangy smell of grease, cooking crunchy bacon that we would enjoy the living room, where my dad would bring out plates of bacon sandwiches that we would fill our mouths with to stop the talking. I would lap up the savoury white bread, vinegary ketchup, and salty bacon, chomping down mouthful after mouthful until we would sip from plastic cups filled with orange juice before taking another bite. When we were finished, we would wipe the grease around our faces with a paper towel, then discard it on a plate to be carried away. With an anxious flip through a colourful plastic magazine from the corner shop down the road, picked for the best toy wrapped beneath its thin plastic cover, flicking between the faces of girl bands with broad smiling faces and polyester skin, and Dennis the Menace, ripping out the instructions for MASH to play with my friends when I get home, checking the time on my mother's iPad, for in this room time seemed to stop, stuck in the 80s, with statues of the Virgin Mary and Irish teddy bears and small trinkets up against the rough cream wallpaper. Soon, we would check the time and proclaim, maybe it was time we were off, before saying our goodbyes, giving hugs and kisses, before piling ourselves back into the car, where I would do up my seatbelt and pull out a small Starburst sweet from my pocket, bought at the vending machine at the swimming pool before, leaving the road as the flats finally gave way and fell to the ground behind us.